According to CRC Health, an online resource for treatment through Acadia Healthcare System, the United States had more prisoners than any other country in the world. In 2006, that number was at 2.5 million, and it continues to rise. From 2000 to 2006, the United States experienced the largest increase in incarcerations ever. Criminal justice experts attribute that large increase due to harsher sentencing laws, and particularly those related to illegal substance abuse and possession. People who are addicted to drugs and alcohol should have the opportunity for rehabilitation rather than being sent to prison. As a child coming from a family infested with alcoholism and surrounded by peers who are only interested in experimentation, I become interested in this topic because of lack of government concern with the well-being of addicts and their lazy solution to lock them up. Drug and alcohol is an ever-growing epidemic right here in Wisconsin, and it's only getting worse without treatment. I want to convince everyone that rehab is the best option to better people with addiction, rather than sending them to prison. Let's begin by focusing on that addiction is an illness. The first important reason why people shouldn't be sent to prison with addiction is that addiction is an illness, not a crime. Addiction changes the brain by impairing judgments, which can often lead to criminal behavior. Drug and alcohol take over the ability to make proper judgments, similar to that of other mental illnesses. Many addicts also have additional psychiatric issues such as PTSD, depression, social anxiety, ADHD, and even more. The Center of Addiction and Substance Abuse, better known as CASA, stated that inmates with mental illness were more likely to be under the influence when they committed their crime. CASA even reported that 60% of inmates with mental illness compared to 51% of other inmates were actually under the influence when they committed their crime. Unfortunately, drugs and alcohol do little to address the underlying mental health issues that addicted people have, often leading them on a path of destruction. When people with addiction commit crimes, it's usually a direct result from addiction, not criminal behavior. The National Institute on Drug Abuse, better known as NIDA, stated in February 2014 that alcohol and drugs impair judgment, which often lead to criminal behavior, poor anger management, and violent behavior. A 2004 survey by the United States Department of Justice estimated that 70% of state and 64% of federal prisoners regularly used drugs and alcohol prior to incarceration. It also showed that 1 in 4 violent offenders were actually under the influence when they committed their crime. Use-related crimes result from individuals who commit crimes due to the effect the drug has on their psychic ability to make proper choices. Drug and alcohol impair the ability to make good choices, leading them to make poor choices against the law. Let's take a look at the repercussions the lack of resources for rehabilitation have for imprisonment. A second important reason why people with addiction should not be sent in prison is that prisons do not have proper resources in order to give them proper treatment. Prisons are filled with people with addictions, and they lack funding to help them. Locking someone up for a crime but not addressing their addiction will not help cure their addiction in the long run. CRC Health also stated that statistics reveal that many addictions increase while being in prison. The availability for drugs and the desperate need to escape often lead to users using more, and those who are never exposed to drugs on the outside world start using. Without proper treatment, those users will find themselves back out on the streets, using more drugs, going back to jail, being a never-ending cycle. Inmates are likely to find drug trade as active as it was on the outside of prison walls, as they're surrounded by similarly troubled addicts. Prisons are meant for punishment, not as a means of rehabilitation to help them in the future. Few states have the money or interest to devote to providing proper treatment to people with addictions. CASA stated in 1996, a survey of prison facilities indicated that 3/4 of inmates needed substance abuse training, yet only less than 1/4 actually received it. This figure indicates most common reasons for limited availability for resources, which shows budgetary constraint at 71% and space limitations at 51%. Due to staff shortages, prisons are unable to give proper detox to people with addictions, which often leads them to having to quit cold turkey. Without proper attention for detox, it's actually been documented that inmates have died from their body shutting down from dehydration due to severe withdrawal. Incarceration is meant to be a punishment for a crime, and due to lack of resources, it does not focus on treatment for the prisoners. Not only is treatment beneficial to addicts, but it's also less expensive to fund. A third important factor is that treatment is less expensive than incarceration. The cost of incarceration is substantially more than if we were to provide treatment to help them better their lives in their future. It costs a little over $37,000 on average to put somebody in jail for a year in Wisconsin. The United States Bureau of Justice Statistics said that 2,220,300 adults were incarcerated in state and federal prisons in 2013. That's well over $65 billion spent in 1 year.
Hey, stop it.
No matter how expensive treatment is, nothing is compared to the costs that add up from drug and alcohol addiction over the years. Costs can include medical care and health costs due to overdosing, accidental injuries brought on by drug use, and even chronic illnesses caused by drug addiction. As drug use continues to rise, so will incarceration, and the yearly amount of money spent to fund it. Rehabilitation is just cheaper to fund. The NIDA stated that if only 10% of drug-addicted convicts were given proper treatment, that the criminal system would save $4.8 billion. If 40% of addicted convicts received treatment, the criminal system could save up to $12.9 billion. You do the math. The government needs to take more steps into helping better the lives of people with addictions. Sending addicts to rehab rather than putting them in prison is more cost effective in the long run. In review, addiction is a chronic illness, and it needs long-term care, much like diabetes or even heart disease. It changes the brain, often changing users, even the ones we love, into people we don't understand, trust, or like. Addiction needs to be treated as an illness or a disease, not looked at as a punishable crime. And prisons need to devote more time and money into proper treatment, because prisons don't teach addicts to change their behavior or give them proper strategies to prevent another relapse. This is why rehabilitation is the best way to help people with addictions, not sending them to prison. Thank you.